This is the Paracay Podcast, proudly brought to you by major sponsor Jack's Pale Ale, exclusively available at Parramatta Leagues Club, Shannon Cooney from Glenmore Park Realty, Bo Cook from Loan Market, BTZD, the official apparel partner of the Paracay Podcast, and the Parramatta Times, the official media partner of the Paracay Podcast.
Welcome to another episode of the Paracave Podcast. And now over to your host, Troy Warner, broadcasting live from the world-famous Paracave.
And yes, hello and welcome back to another episode of the Paracave Podcast. Troy Warner here, and this is the replay chat that I had with the Duckman on Pulse FM on his weekend sports wrap show on a Sunday night, which you can catch me on a Friday and a Sunday about 7:05 p.m. and we chat about all things rugby league, and also we sometimes throw in a little bit of other sports as well with whatever sport is happening at the moment. So in this chat we talk about the Pacific Championships in rugby league, and we also talk about player transfers that are happening at the moment as well, and expansion in rugby league as well. So a little bit of an interesting chat with the Duckman and also Lewis as well. So I hope you enjoy, and now it's over to you, Duckman.
All right, welcome back to the Weekend Sports Wrap. So you're here with the Duckman and Lewis, and we've got special guest Troy Warner from the Paracave Podcast on. Troy, how are you going?
Going fantastic, Duckman. A big day in sport today and yesterday. Motor racing, the V8 supercars up at the Gold Coast, and obviously the Rugby League Pacific Championships. Probably not a good weekend for New Zealand fans, as they had a few losses. Although
not particularly.
They did have a good win. The Kiwi Ferns did beat the Jillaroos the first time since 2016, so they had that to cheer about.
Yes, we'll start off with that. We'll give the Kiwi fans a bit of love before we put the boot in, because the boot's going to be coming, and it's not going to miss. So the Jillaroos actually lost to the All Ferns. What was it? 16 points to 8, I think it was.
12-6.
12-6, there you go. So why did I think it was 16-8? I must have looked at the game from last weekend that they played or something. So I need to get some better stats, I'm telling you.
Yeah, the Kiwi Ferns, 12-6 over the Jillaroos. It was 6-all at half-time. The Jillaroos, their first loss since 2016, so about 11 or 12 games straight. And look, it was great to see the Kiwi Ferns get the win, even though I'm obviously an Australian supporter. The Jillaroos, their ball handling just really stuffed them. Their completion rates were 6 from 16 or something like that in the first half, and New Zealand capitalised on that. And yeah, they never came back from that. And the Kiwi Ferns, they got their last try in the 62nd minute and went on to win the game.
Yeah, there you go. So no big surprise there. So did you see back in the day in the 90s, there was a show called Live and Sweaty. Used to have Elle McFeast on and Andrew Denton back on Channel 2 back in the early to mid-90s, until I reckon it was on still in the late 90s as well. It was on for about 5 years or more, I suppose. And they made a song called It's Just Not Fair, But I Don't Care As Long As We Beat New Zealand. So that's all Australia's worried about. And we lined that up with the Olympics. Pretty sure it had to do with the 92 Olympics. No one was too worried about how we actually went. As long as we beat New Zealand, everything else didn't bother us. So do you reckon that still applies now?
Oh, yeah. Look, it's obviously a great rivalry between the two nations. Every time they play in world sport, I mean, it's probably not as intense as the Australian-English rivalry, like in cricket, but definitely every time these two sides play, there's a great rivalry, and each team obviously wants to get the win, and especially this weekend, Australia got the win in the cricket and the men's rugby league, and the women got the win in the the Kiwi Ferns got the win in the women's rugby league as well. So, Australia a bit 2-1 over New Zealand, you could say. And look, it's always great times when these two sides play.
Yeah, that's right. So we'll kick on. So is there anybody else competitive in the women's game in rugby league at the moment internationally outside of Australia and New Zealand? So I know the UK's got competitions, but I don't think it's at the same level, is it, that what Australia and New Zealand are?
No, it's probably not. Obviously, Australia and New Zealand are the two standouts in the world game for on the women's side. The Tongan side, they're slowly building a little bit. The PNG side, the PNG Orchids, they can be competitive at times, but the New Zealand and Australian sides are definitely the standout teams in the women's game.
Yeah, so there's a lot of girls that I know that I've been involved with through rugby, and I can tell you right now, some of those young girls that are coming through, they're not going to make it to the Wallaroos or to the Jillaroos. That pathway's pretty much been explained to them, so they may well make it, but there's that many people. What's happening now is the young Islanders, so Lewis will be able to resonate with this, they're getting drawn back into their local affiliated side. So they've got in rugby union the New South Wales Samoan team for competitions. They've got the New South Wales Tongan team for competitions, and the Pacific Islands, they have that presence on the ground. Rugby league's doing the same thing now too. So I actually think some of these young girls are coming through the rugby system but play league as well, and they're in the Tasha Gale Cup and Lisa, whatever it is, Cup below that, and then the top women's competition as well. So Harvey Norman Super W and that. Some of them are going to go through, and we'll see them start playing for Tonga and Samoa and Fiji and PNG and all this, that they will become quite good sides probably in about 5 years, so maybe earlier. Like some of these girls are young, so by young, I'm talking about 16 to 17. So they're in the growth and development pathway at the moment. So people that are involved in those systems, they've got the finger on the pulse. They know all about it. They know what they want to do. They're doing all the right things at the right time, tapping into the right players. So, and it's these girls and guys at those age groups that will potentially play for Tonga and Samoa in league and union down the track as well.
And look, and they're getting a lot of these offers. I actually know a friend of mine, their daughter, got into one of those teams. And, you know, she was born here, but the parents are obviously Maori and, you know, Samoan, and the opportunity maybe to go through the Australian system might not be present, but the players are good enough. And so they're seeing this pathway going, you know what? I don't have to go through the Australian pathway. I could go to my own heritage pathway, and there's more opportunities for them. So it's quite interesting to see that we are already seeing these opportunities arrive for these athletes that not necessarily have to follow the linear path.
Yeah, so that's what I think we're going to see. So I'm not sure how many extra players you're aware of like that, Troy, but I know that the Penrith Rugby League competition, when I've spoken to Dean Jones, who's is the football manager at Windsor Leagues Club, is also a rugby league development manager for the NRL in Penrith. He's told me that the Penrith pathways for women's football in particular it's massive. So Penrith are trying to grow their own competition with their own developed players, and then the clubs have their own players as well. They're going to play against effectively the players that have gone to play within the Penrith comp for Penrith because they're trying to develop it. It is growing very rapidly, and I think we're going to start seeing some pretty big rewards soon. So by soon, we're definitely talking a couple of years down track still, but 3 years, 4 years, I think we'll genuinely see some very good, very well-developed football players coming through from these back-end programs that people are not aware of. So people that are involved in it are aware of it, but it's not like it's all over the media that these things are happening either.
Yeah, definitely. I think with the women's game in rugby league is certainly the fastest growing game in the country, I think it is. And I think with Penrith, I think they're slowly working towards getting an NRLW team into the competition. I think they've got a Tasha Gale side in the competition next year, which would be good. And I think just the thing with the women's game at the moment is there's so many pathways now for girls and women to play rugby league, so they can try in each and anywhere. And I think with the competition itself, the NRLW competition growing as well, with more teams coming into the competition. We saw 4 more teams this year. We'll see more come into the competition in the future as well, so there'll be more spots available for players, and that's only a good thing. And as you said, then they can tailor off to playing for their national nations. We've seen just last weekend Tiana Penatani, who has played for the Gillaroos, she captained the Tongan side last weekend against the Kiwi Ferns. So I think if you'll see maybe like what's happening in the men's game a little bit with the Kangaroos, some of these players, they start off their campaigns, their careers representing the Kangaroos, and then they may have a parent or grandmother or grandfather or family member that is of another heritage, and at the back end of their careers they still like to play representative football, but they like to represent the other half of the family and play for these developing nations, which is always good because they've had the experience at the top level playing for the Kangaroos or Gillaroos, and then they can take that experience and work with the younger players back in the developing nations.
So this is what I definitely think we're going to see. So there's one player I can think of right now off the top of my head who does that. So she actually went over to France to watch the Rugby World Cup yesterday, and that is Onia Schwalger. So she played rugby for New South Wales. She also played for who was a Western Force in WA. She played for Randwick as well. She's a prop. She's done an ankle before and all sorts of stuff. So I did some Cook Islands dance with her at some island function a couple of years ago. So don't ask me how I got roped into that, but I got roped into it by girls from the New South Wales Waratah Super W side. It was exciting. So like I looked goofy and that stuff because I can't dance. And she knew what she was doing. I had no idea what I was doing. It was very bad, like Steady Eddie on steroids. And but she's involved in that sort of program, trying to provide opportunities for young Islander girls and guys to play for the country of heritage. So, and all that sort of stuff. It's really important for them to do that. So I like that they've got these different programs now, and that it's not just like I felt like when we were growing up, that some of the Islander players who were playing in the NRL and stuff would get told, if you don't play for Australia, well, you're not going to get to play Origin. You're probably not going to play first grade very much either in that. So they wouldn't play for their island nations because they were scared of the financial ramifications of that, whereas I think that's much less likely to be the case these days.
Yeah, I think all those sort of rules are slowly changing these days, so they can play for developing nations. I think the Tier 2 nations, you can play for them and still play for Origin. I think we saw that this year with Katoni Staggs, who played for New South Wales, and I think he's played for Tonga before. So I think it's only beneficial. I mean, another name in the women's game, Kiana Takarangi, Brad's sister, she's represented the Kiwi Ferns, and now she's playing for the Cook Islands. So that's another example of a player who's played at the highest level in terms of a Tier 1 nation going back and giving back to the developing nations if they're able to represent that country. So I think it's only important that those sort of players do that, so it grows the game in those developing nations.
Yeah, I definitely think we need to see more of that. So the most notable player, I suppose, like in men's competition anyway, who did that was Andrew Fafita. So he wasn't the first, nowhere near the first to do it, but he played for Australia and then decided to play for Tonga after playing for Australia and New South Wales, and went and played for Tonga, and pretty sure they beat Australia, and they beat Australia then, and they beat Samoa. I'm pretty sure they might have beaten New Zealand. They went on a pretty good run too, had a good side, and that was a massive gap. When he did that game, that changed the cultural shift, and that's when it's starting to see all these positive things come in. And considering what 50-something% of NRL players now are something that got Polynesian background, why wouldn't we keep doing this?
Yeah, absolutely. And another one that comes to mind is Jason Taumalolo as well. He represented New Zealand and then has represented Tonga. I'm just trying to think of anyone else who's done. Tyson
Yeah.
Frizzell as well.
Israel Folau. Yeah.
Yeah, Tyson Frizzell currently is over in England with the Tongan side. They got a Test match series over there. He played for obviously Australia and New South Wales as well. So he's now representing his Tongan heritage. So yeah, a few of those names come to mind, and yeah, it's great to see them giving back.
Yeah, 100%. So we'll kick on from there. So the men's game was 36-18 there. So I did go through it before. What happened? Lindsay Collins picked up 2 tries. Who else picked up tries there? Let's have a
Valentine
look.
Holmes,
So,
Dylan Edwards,
yeah,
Ben Hunt, and Cameron Murray.
Yeah, so they all got tries. Mulatalo, Nakora, and Brown all got tries for for the Kiwis, and Jermaine Osaka kicked 3 conversions there. So, did you see the game, and what did you make of it?
Yeah, look, I did watch the game, and I thought at the start of the game it was a very different haka that I've seen performed before the game. It went for long, and it was just a very different one. But I always enjoy watching that haka and the traditional dances before games that you see from the Tongan and the Samoan sides as well. And then it all just went downhill for the Kiwis. They kicked out on the full on the kickoff. Jermaine Osako put it over the dead ball line, so it didn't start too well for them. And then they were sort of in the game. It sort of went to and fro. Valentine Holmes got the first try. Britton Nakora came back and scored again. And then Lindsay Collins, he made an impact when he came on the field, scoring 2 tries. And in places that you thought front rower probably shouldn't be. And then I think the real turning point of the game was when Harry Grant came on the field. He just made an instant impact with his passes. One of those passes was to Lindsay Collins to score his 2nd try. And just his darts out of dummy half around the tiring New Zealand defence, and he was the player of the match and probably deserved so. And look, we'll see these teams play next week as well in the Pacific Championships final. So it'll be interesting to see what the Kiwis do, whether they make changes or go in with the same side. There'll obviously be a few changes to the Kangaroos side with Payne Haas and probably Tino Fasil and Malawi coming back into the side. And maybe a few changes in the backs as well, but we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, so did Nico Hines end up playing yesterday as well? Did he get a run?
He did off the bench, and look, he went pretty well. He just did his job, and he'll be all more experienced for the run, and I think he set up a try as well, so off one of his passes to Cameron Murray, which Cameron Murray scored 6 tries in the last 6 consecutive tests, so he equals Ron Coote with that record as well. So that's a pretty impressive record to score. So if he scores next week in the Pacific Championships final, well then it'll be 7 tries in 7 tests. So he'll be out on his own with that record. But amazing to score that many tries in a row in Test football.
Yeah, it's an amazing record. He's a very good player too, Cameron Murray. And versatile, so he can play in multiple positions. And apparently, he is one of the targets. Well, according to News Limited, I wouldn't take this for gospel. Would be someone that Rugby Australia would probably target. So he did play rugby at high school. I think he went to Shore or something, didn't he? So went to rugby school. So he did play rugby a bit. And is kind of probably the versatile sort of player they'd be looking for. So does play forward in the NRL. If he played in rugby, he'd be like 3, or like call him midfielder. So 3/4 be looking at a centre. So in a traditional centre point of view, like inside centre, outside centre. So be one of them potentially. Could possibly play him as 10, but I don't think he's got a kicking game. So, yeah, it'll be interesting. So, but at the meantime, he's going to stay with rugby league, and I think he's vital to Souths. So we're going to kick on here. The first thing I want to look at, so in the Daily Telegraph today, I didn't expect this to come out. They put a thing about the new November rules here for transfers and contracts and what's going to happen. So I know this one's out of the blue a little bit. You probably didn't expect it. When I saw it today, I just went, we'll have a chat about it. So they're saying they've got a negotiation period here of 10 days. So must provide their incumbent club with the negotiation period 10 days from the date of notice that they want to leave to be able to stay. So the NRL have to accept it after that, and then the player can choose to give notice to the club if they're going to leave it, and they accept the 10 days notice, and the club can then engage in negotiations. So, and the offer from the rival NRL club must be an official offer submitted to the NRL salary cap order. So there's be no underhanded stuff. So people can't make up stories and that and stuff about it now. The media still will. I guarantee you 100% now look at that. And then we'll say the last section here, the expiry of the 10 days that a player must sign or reject the offer from the rival club. So they're talking about top 5 players coming off contract for next year. Ezra Mam, Tom Dearden, Bradman Best, Jerome Luai, Joseph Manu. So how does Joseph Manu keep making that list? Seriously. So come on. So I'm telling you, someone did it just to irritate me, 100%.
Yeah, you don't like him, do you? He's
it's not. So if I
he's
meet
the
him,
gold boot winner from last year.
He might be a golden boot winner, but he's also like won the big faker award too for faking injuries, and then people pull out of tackles, and then he runs off and scores a try. So if he did it to me, he'd be getting pinned on the ground. So just like what happened when, who was it? Kalen Ponga did it. But no, it was Reece Walsh when Joseph Tapani went and smashed him in that tackle. That's what I would like to see happen to Joseph Manu next time he does one of those things. Just follow through, don't pull out the tackle, even if it's after full time. Just make sure you know that he's there. So and finish the tackle off. So that's what I want to see. So for those 5, to be honest, they're all brilliant players. So who are the clubs you reckon are going to be looking for them? So Ezra Mam, he's a 5'8". Tom Dearden's a half a 5'8". Bradman Best, so he's the only one there that's an outside centre. Manu can play fullback, centre, and 5'8" probably. So who would add the best value to a side there? Because people are going to be looking for this. You're going to have the Dragons here going for people. You're probably going to have West Tigers going for people as well. Maybe the Dolphins be looking at some of them guys, and probably Canberra. I think Canberra might be trying to replace White. So I actually think if Jerome Luai was serious and wanted to leave Sydney, Canberra's got a serious chance of picking him up if he's prepared to really change the scenery, because I think they've got the money to do some business too without Jack White and now.
Yeah, look, I think I don't think he'll go out of Sydney. I think he'll stay in Sydney. I think the Panthers have come out and offered him $850,000 a year for 2 years, which is a pretty decent offer. And I think if he wants to stay at a successful club and have the chance to win more premierships, then he'll take that offer and stay there. He'll get more at another club, as you mentioned, like the West Tigers or the Dragons. They will always be in the news for signing players to increase their chances of winning a comp or becoming more competitive. And look, I think the new rules there with the NRL, with the 10-day cooling off period, is a good thing, because how many times do players sometimes make a decision and sign a contract and then regret signing that contract, and then they're stuck to it. So I think it's like buying a house, isn't it? Like you sign a contract and you got that cooling off period. So I think that's a good thing, and it'll work in favour of both the club and the players, because the clubs that have brought up those players and then they lose them, well, then they're losing a player that they've developed a lot of money, spent a lot of money on developing and stuff like that. So especially those ones that are juniors that have come through the ranks, like most of the Penrith players at the moment, they've got a big junior players that have come through their ranks. So if they lose any of their players, well, then they spent a lot of money on them. So it's only fair that their current club gets a say in whether they can increase the offer that they've offered them or anything like that. So I think it's a good thing.
So one thing I'd like to see, so this is completely off track too, with the rugby league contracts, when there's a transfer done or a contract signed from a player and they play for a junior club, like let's say Windsor Wolves, Cambridge Park, Penrith Waratahs, whatever, if that club still exists, and if that club doesn't exist, it should go to their junior district. Why don't the clubs get like 1% or something of the player's contract for the next year? So, like, let's say Kalen Ponga signs for $1 million or whatever, and played for whoever, played for like Redcliffe or whatever. Why don't they get like 1% of that? So, like, 10 grand goes towards them for helping his development. So that would go a long way to helping fund junior clubs.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting point that you make, and I think, I don't know, would you want to give away $10,000 on your contract if you were signing $1 million contract? I mean, some players.
Yeah, I just think that. I just think the NRL should do it. I think the NRL should take it out of the players' hands a bit and control it, not the club themselves. So they should say every contract gets signed, 1% goes back to either the club, and if they don't exist anymore, it goes to the junior district to help develop the game of rugby league in the local area. That will fund, like I said, 10 grand. So it's a lot of money. So it's not going to change the universe for clubs, but it will help fund their junior programs and keep it running and keep it moving on. So
I think the only fault with that is that do have some teams that hardly have any juniors. So we see the Sydney Roosters, they don't have a big, massive junior base. So if they were to sign players, they wouldn't necessarily get a lot of juniors based at their club. So I think you have to look at the junior league sizes as well across the league and sort of share it around a little bit in terms of, obviously Penrith's got the biggest junior league in the world compared to the Sydney Roosters. So how do you compare those?
Well, that's the thing. So you got to have a look at how that all works. But you've got buying and selling clubs all the time, and that's why people do it. So you got to go and get your talent from somewhere. So if someone else develops it and spends thousands and thousands of dollars to find players, why shouldn't you be compensating at least the very, very junior club where they come from? So that starts off because they're grassroots clubs and they need the money. So haven't met a grassroots club goes, we're swimming in so much cash it's not funny. So I've never heard one say that ever.
No, definitely not.
So there's another question I've got for you. So out of that list there, so who would Parramatta be looking at? Joseph Manu, obviously. So he'd be probably someone that wants versatile back. And would they buy Luai, do you think, or make an offer for Luai?
No, they wouldn't go after Luai. I think you're right there, probably Joey Manu as an outside back to strengthen that up, and their supposed X-Factor player that they're talking about in the middle of the year. There was talk this week about Josh Addo-Carr coming to Parramatta with a player transfer deal. So the player that in question that was mentioned was Ryan Madison. That was in the news this week. So Gus Gould doesn't know anything about that apparently, and so who knows what's going to happen there. But probably out of that list, either Joey Manu or Bradman Best for Parramatta, an outside back. Definitely for that. I think we're pretty settled in the halves, so I don't think we need any more halves. So yeah, definitely Bradman Best or Joey Manu if they were going to target one of those players. But I think both of those players will stay at the club that they're at now. Yeah.
So funnily enough, so Michael Carianis, Brent Reid and Dave Riccio put this list together. They think Penrith would possibly look at targeting, if Luai left, someone like Tom did, and so it would be an interesting choice. I do know West Tigers if West Tigers are going to turn their fortune around, they need to pick up Bradman Best because they're actually actively going for Bradman Best. Justin Olam as well, and need to get him. And I would be saying out of them five, that probably realistically, if they want to rebuild quickly, get two of them, either Bradman Best and Joey Manu or Luai. So they need to change their fortunes in the back straight away. And they need a couple of them. They need another Gareth Ellis, but I don't know where you're going to get one of them from. So there's only one, and they haven't been able to find another player like Gareth Ellis ever since he left.
There was talk this week too, you mentioned Tom Dearden there, that the Dragons could be potentially interested in getting Tom down to the Dragons from the Cowboys. So Shane Flanagan would want him down there at the club. Obviously, we've seen how good a couple of years he's had at the Cowboys playing Origin, so that could be a welcome addition to there.
Yeah. So you got questions to ask Troy Lewis? So you have one about Michael Checker.
Yeah. So Troy, what's your opinion on the Tigers going after Checker?
Well, look, I think that's a very interesting one. We've obviously seen how successful he has been in rugby union with lesser, I guess, competitive teams at the moment, like this World Cup that has just happened, Argentina making the finals of the World Cup. So we've seen what he can do, and I think it'll be a good move. Obviously, not in a coaching role, because I think they've got that one sorted. I think finally, but I think just having someone of his knowledge around the game, he's done a little bit of time at the Sydney Roosters before as well in the background, so he loves rugby league and rugby union. So he's coached the Lebanon rugby league team before as well in the World Cup. So look, I think someone of his experience would be good to have around the Tigers. I'm not too sure what he would do there. Obviously, offer advice to Benji and Robbie, and obviously be an ear to some of the players that are there as well. So, look, if they can get him, they can get him. If not, well then they'll have to look at someone else that's probably experienced enough to do that role.
Yeah, I think he'd be like a director of football. That's what you're talking about in the Telegraph today. Overseeing football operations. So the processes that he did that worked in rugby, they would be the same in rugby union. In rugby league. So it's different sport, but same sort of processes and putting things in place and that. Someone needs to get in there seriously and shake the board up a bit. They got people in there that are hanging on. I don't know, like fridge magnets. And need to move some of those guys on. How many are actually adding value to the business at the moment? They've got to be honest with themselves, and if they can't do it, they need to get KPMG or someone do an external audit and try to work out what people's actual roles are and what value they bring to the business, and then give them a report and say, this is what we think, and if it's not working, well, move them on if you've got to, because at the moment it's not helping having people that are not taking them forward in the right direction. So most of the board members, and it surprised me, are West people, and it's torn all over the place at the moment.
Yeah, I'm not too sure how their constitution works over at the Tigers, but if it's anything like Parramatta, well then you need obviously the members to vote in board elections and vote them out, I guess. So I'm not too sure how that off-field stuff works over there, but you're right. I mean, there's been cries in the media from fans about their CEO, Justin Pascoe. He's been there for a long time and hasn't really, hasn't got any success there, so they're calling for him to resign, bit like the Dragons with Peter Doust all those years ago. And yeah, they just need to sort that out, and the quicker they can sort that out, the better they will be on the field, because they won't have those distractions. In some other signing news during the week, good news for Warriors fans. Andrew Webster, the New Zealand Warriors coach, signed on for another 5 years, so he'll be there till the end of 2028. So that's a big deal for a first year coach. He obviously got them to the prelim final this year, and
that's good news.
Yeah, so obviously got them to the prelim final this year. So they'll obviously have a lot of faith in him. He turned the club around and this year, so that's good news for him. Sean Kepi from Manly has signed with South Sydney Rabbitohs. So he's gone over to there. KO Weeks, again from Manly, has gone down to the Canberra Raiders as well, probably to play in the halves. So a little bit of movement here and there at some other different clubs.
Yeah. So the other big news story in rugby league is PNG. Are they over the line yet, or nearly over the line? They must be close, because they pretty much come out today and declared that they're keen to use Wayne Bennett to market the game. So everyone over in PNG, they love Wayne Bennett because he's the Australian coach, what he did for Queensland and his affiliation with the Broncos, and he's gone to other clubs and done stuff. I think he would be the wrong person to coach. He's getting too old now. He would be a good director of something, director of football, rugby, whatever you want to be, and guide someone like, say, got Christian Wolf now at Redcliffe. So who would you get to coach PNG, I don't know. You look at someone like Adrian Lamb, so someone that has a direct affiliation with them. That would be the step in the right direction for their first season if they get into the comp.
Yeah, look, it's an interesting one, isn't it? I think the Australian government is throwing millions of dollars towards this expansion bid of PNG. I really don't know how it's going to work because I don't think they'll be able to play out of PNG. They may be able to play 1, maybe 2 games a year there, and they'll have to play out of far north Queensland, I think, for the rest of the competition. So I'm not too sure how those logistics should work week in, week out in PNG. But they certainly have a love for the game. It's their national game. In terms of a coach, well, Justin Holbrook is currently coaching the national side. So he would be an option, obviously. He's obviously had that NRL experience. He probably was a little bit hard done by this season, getting the flick from the Gold Coast Titans. So he would be an option. As you mentioned, there was obviously Wayne Bennett. Who knows when he's going to retire? I think this year is his last year at the Dolphins. And then I'm not too sure what his role would be on. I think Andrew Abdo has come out and said he'd be a perfect candidate for that PNG side. I think any sort of big name rugby league identity who you would have at PNG would they'd love it. They'd love it because they love their rugby league. So I don't think it would really matter who they had. I mean, Adrian Lamb, as you said, is a great option. Because he's had that experience coaching in England, won a Challenge Cup this year. So, and obviously he is of PNG descent, so that would be a good option. But if you're going to introduce a side, I'd probably PNG probably wouldn't be my pick. I'd probably be going over to Perth, putting a side in there, and look, potentially trying to put a side in Adelaide as well.
Yeah, that's what I've been looking at those areas, 100%. So I still can't believe that Adelaide was the only club in the NRL, so at the time, so other than the Broncos, to make them profit, and they got punted. So they just got dudded completely. So it was a dodgy deal when Super League merged with the ARL to become the NRL, so just dudded people over. So but I feel aggrieved about that because I thought Adelaide were making genuine progress in a sustained way, right? So they weren't going to win a comp anytime in a hurry, but they were looking at like the 5 to 10 year plan as opposed to the 1 year plan that some of the other sides are perhaps looking at.
Well, we take state of origin there, so I mean, if we're not trying to grow the game there, why are we taking state of origin games over there? It's a weird one, but I mean, I think we're at 17 teams now. We definitely need an 18th team because of the competition and the way it works. And then I think that'll have to be soon, probably in about 2 years' time, I reckon, just to fix it up. Because I mean, this year you saw teams having 3 buys during the year, and you know, fans were over having 3 buys throughout the year because they were all at different times and not at times that they wanted and stuff like that. So we need an 18th team. And then I think once we get an 18th team, maybe in about 5 years, maybe another 2 teams, and just have that solid at a 20-team competition.
Yeah, so I could see PNG being a 20th team. I can't see them being an 18th team. I do think they will. That is what they're moving towards that happening. So I think it'll happen. So I would think some sort of Western Reds side, Perth side will be probably next cab off the rank. And if PNG do get in, I think it's going to bury another Brisbane side getting up. So it would be looking at an Adelaide or something like that. I think viably like that anyway. So there we go. That's all the league stuff. So what do you got coming up this week in the Paracade podcast, Troy?
Obviously, a replay of this chat tomorrow will come out, and not too sure yet who I'm going to interview this week for the podcast, but I will have a interview with Mark Bugden coming out later on in the week. And
so why didn't you eat the cane toad?
Well, would you eat a cane toad?
I've done some weird stuff, so yeah.
It's a really funny story, that one, because basically he was saying like why in the hell would anybody use that as a footy card picture? It's definitely one out of the books, I guess. I mean, he's right, because I mean most footy cards are
Action pictures.
Yeah, of players in action, not attempting to take a bite out of a cane toad. So his chat will come out on Thursday, and currently I have a chat with Paul Clark that is available now on Apple and Spotify. Former Balmain, Penrith and Parramatta player, won a premiership at the Panthers, their first one in 1991, and he's got some great stories that he's told throughout the podcast, and one of them I put up today of that back in the day Penrith were he heard that someone in the club was talking about Penrith were trying to recruit Paul Harrigan from Newcastle in a big way, and they were offering him big money, so 180,000 back in the day, so it'd probably be worth $1.5 million today. So that would have been an interesting thing if Penrith got Paul Harrigan. What would that have done for Penrith, and what would that have done for Newcastle as well?
Yeah, that would have been back before Super League, so probably about 94, 95. So before Super League came in, and that was big money. Anyway, Troy, thanks for joining us tonight. Really appreciate it. So, like I said, I was just chatting earlier, got a song queued up for you. You're going to enjoy this next one. So, have a great week.
I will.
Make sure you keep listening to this.
Will do.
And everyone will be able to catch Troy again on Friday night with us. Thanks for this, and I'll chat to you again on Friday.
No worries. Thanks, Duckman. Thanks, Lewis. Chat to you on Friday.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Paracave Podcast. See you next time.